Good afternoon. Today I'm announcing that charges have been filed along with a motion to relinquish jurisdiction of juvenile AB. AB was charged with a conspiracy to commit aggravated murder. The prosecutor's office is asking that AB's case be bound over to the Court of Common Pleas for trial as an adult. If adjudicated as a delinquent child in juvenile court, AB faces the maximum possible sentence of a commitment to the Department of Youth Services until the age of 21. If convicted as an adult, AB faces the maximum possible sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Beginning early in January, AB, along with an out-of-state co-conspirator, planned to conduct a mass casualty event at the Mariemont High School. AB is a student at Mariemont High School, had created a plan for the crime, a list of students and teachers to be killed, and a plan to access a firearm located within his own home. Mariemont police officers were able to intervene after receiving a tip from a fellow student who became aware of the plan. I am thankful for the great work of the Mariemont Police Department to prevent what would have been a horrific tragedy in our community. Countless lives were saved by their swift actions. Children should not fear going to schools. Teachers should not fear that students will cause them harm to them or their classmates. And I want it loud and clear that violence in our schools will not be tolerated. My office will do everything necessary to ensure those that commit violence will be held accountable and responsible. I'd like to introduce those that are alongside me. I have the Chief of the Mariemont Police Department, Richard Hines, Lieutenant Rennie, Superintendent of the Mariemont Schools, Stephen S. Estep. I also have to my right my Chief and Assistant Chief of the Juvenile Division, Linda Scott and Leah Dinkelacker. At this time, we're open for questions.
What would have caused, I know, $64 million question, but what would have led this kid to this point? Did something happen during his school year, or what led him to this point?
His motive, his personal motive, is not relevant to the matter at this point in time in the case. I don't know if it will become relevant during the course of the investigation, but I think what we're dealing with here and what we've seen recently in our community, from the beatings and attacks, the vicious attacks occurring by students in our downtown streets, the vicious attack that we had a couple weeks ago on a Colerain teacher, that what we have is a larger community problem, a societal problem that needs to be addressed, which is violence that is being committed by juveniles. And this office will continue to advocate and to be asking that any dangerous, violent juvenile is removed from the streets, and we will be enforcing and demanding that our court system and our judges hold these students behind and in detention until these cases are resolved.
I assume you want him upgraded to adult status, or would you prefer that he's tried in adult court?
We are, because we do not know whether or not our juvenile court currently will hold juveniles responsible for their actions and make sure that our community is safe. We are also simultaneously, along with the charges, filing our bind-over motions so that he can be held accountable, and we feel we have probably a better shot in adult court right now than we do in juvenile court to make sure that our citizens, our students, our teachers, our neighborhoods are safe.
Can we ask the lieutenant a quick question?
Lieutenant Pitchman.
So you are the chief investigator on this particular case?
I'm one of them.
Can you tell me what exactly led you to, other than this boy who came forward and told his parents, what made this such a credible threat? And who is this out-of-state suspect, co-conspirator?
There's limited things I can say on that, as it's an ongoing investigation. I'll defer the rest to the police chief.
Yes, like Lieutenant Pitsley just said, it is an ongoing investigation, and we're not going to comment on anybody other than the person that's incarcerated now.
Can you at least talk about what led you to this out-of-state co-conspirator?
It was through the investigation, but that's all I'm going to say at this point in time.
I understand that you might have some screenshots that you were going to show us.
I'm not going to comment on any of the investigations at this time, other than what we've already said.
Okay, if I can jump in. We do have some of the screenshots of the cell phone where there was communication that I think we're willing to share, and that, take that down. Thank you. Will you take that down? There's something on there that wasn't redacted. Okay. We did this very quickly. There is information that I can provide later to all of you. I just noticed something was not redacted on that screenshot that I'm concerned about. So obviously, it was shown here, but it is something that we would ask your cooperation with us so we do not jeopardize an additional investigation that may be occurring out of state.
You don't want us to show the phone numbers, what you're saying?
Not, yes, that's what I'm concerned about. So I'll get with you afterwards about that, and we would ask that you would respect that process.
Can you tell us then what we would have seen?
I do not have the actual screenshot. I will, is that something you can show me? Let me just put it this way. There was communication going, this happened very quickly with these, so I apologize for the graphics today. But what you're seeing, it was an obvious threat. There was no doubt that this was going to occur. There is no doubt that because a student received the tip and was able to get in touch with the vice principal of Mariemont School, and then the school was working directly with the police department, that they were able to make sure that this person was taken into custody.
How soon was this going to occur?
We think within a matter of days, possibly even in that following week, from what we could tell.
Sorry, when it comes to the student in school, had the student had other disciplinary issues in school that we know of, or was this out of the blue?
I don't have any comment at this time regarding his past or prior history.
I'm sorry, back to the screenshots. Can you at least tell us what we would have seen?
You would
Perhaps
see-
you can grab the,
You would see there's conversation regarding getting a firearm, this other individual coming from out of state with a firearm, going into the school. There was a hit list that was listed on some of the screenshots of individuals that he wanted to kill, he wanted to rape, things of that nature.
And this is communication allegedly had by the student and this co-conspirator, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that person an adult or another?
It's an
kid?
adult, out-of-state co-conspirator.
Under arrest now, or?
At this point, I don't want to comment on what's happening in that case.
Can you tell us the state?
Not at this time.
or
there's
the,
an
the age of the adult?
The agent, you feel comfortable with me revealing that? Approximately 22, 24, somewhere in that range, an older adult, older than the 14-year-old. Let me put it that way.
Can you comment whether this adult was calling the shots, or was it this 14-year-old who was calling the shots?
That at this time I'm not comfortable discussing. I don't know enough yet. The investigation is ongoing. We will have additional information as time goes on.
For the police chief, can you speak from the time that initial report came in from the kid notified his parent until now, and how quickly you've been able to move through this and make all these things happen?
Do you want me to take them?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. This developed late morning, correct? Yesterday?
When we brought him in from the school, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Can we talk to Mr. Easted?
Yeah.
Quick question for you, sir. What steps is the Mariemont School District taking to address the bullying and/or mental health of your students?
Mental health services in the Mariemont City Schools has always been a top priority. And we have a very comprehensive robust program, kindergarten through 12th grade, to ensure that we address and help our students with their mental health needs. And that ranges from therapists being available in our buildings, school counselors being available for our students. So certainly the mental health of our students is top priority for us.
Do you have any kind of formal anti-bullying program?
We do have programs like that in our elementary levels. We also have a 24-hour phone line and email address that's available for students or parents to anonymously report any issues that is monitored and that our school administrators respond to.
So often in these cases, you know, unfortunately a tragedy happens and we find out after the fact that there are people who knew the person, who thought, I saw this sign, there was this red flag there. Can you speak to the importance that this student felt safe enough to say something?
You know, I'm just incredibly thankful that we are able to say today that this plot was thwarted and that a very serious tragedy was avoided because of the proactive measures that this student and this student's parent took to report their concern to our local police department. And I can't say thank you enough to our local police department, to the response of the FBI, the response of the prosecutor's office to act so swiftly so that we are where we are today and not dealing with a very, very tragic situation.
I have one other question on this because I'm going through my mental Rolodex in my head about cases. I don't remember another case where there was conspiracy to commit murder. We get a lot of calls about threats at school. I think it underscores the seriousness of this, and while there's been some reference made, I mean, to the extent that you can, I know it's an ongoing investigation, but maybe just open the door to this, what was going on. I mean, that's a major charge, conspiracy to commit murder. So can you give us any more insight into the seriousness of this?
Well, as you said, it's very serious, obviously, and we're taking it very seriously. But there's no doubt in anyone's mind in this investigation that this was a joke, that this was something that just was a fantasy. We believe that this was going to be carried out. We believed it was a tragedy that was averted because of the bravery of a student and the family doing the right thing. They saw something, they heard something, and they said something. We believe that had that student not come forward, and nobody discovered the plan that was out there for weeks, happening and being planned through by this student of Mariemont, we'd be talking about a tragedy in our community with a lot of lives lost. We believe that this student, by coming forward, as well as the superintendent and the chief of police and the lieutenant in their investigation, how quickly they acted, how thoroughly they acted, and they coordinated and worked together, that they stopped this terrible tragedy that was in the making.
Do you have any indication that this was a threat at just the high school or the high school and the middle school? Can you go into that at all?
It was just a high school, is my understanding.
We heard there were problems at home. Are AB's parents cooperating?
Want to answer?
The home is just the suspect and his father. That's the only people in the home. And we did have some cooperation from the father in the investigation.
And it was the father's gun that this child was intending on using? You said that the gun was going to come from the home.
I'm not going to comment on who owned the gun, no. But the gun was at the house.
And you're still monitoring the school. You're going to keep some...
Absolutely. We have beefed up our patrol in and around the school. We plan on doing that at least the rest of the week, if not further. And, you know, our community is obviously up in arms, and rightfully so, but I want to let them know that the threat has been contained. It is safe. There's no immediate danger to the community or the school or the staff at the school at this time. So,
You said at the start, it's a plan to access a firearm located at the home, so does that mean there was access to the firearm, or it was still a plan to access, trying to figure out how?
yeah, I'm not going to go into that detail, just the fact that there was a firearm in the home, which we now have it in our custody.
Can you comment whether it was a long gun, a handgun?
I will not. I will not.
Could there be charges against the parents?
I'm not going to comment on that either.
Yes, sir.
Prosecutor, just one somewhat off topic. When you came out of the meeting yesterday, I know we had talked to you before the meeting, but this meeting of leaders throughout the community, separate from this incident, but since you alluded to just the craziness happening all over in various situations, did you feel good about coming out of that meeting with other leaders?
I think any time that leaders in our community that come together to try to work and find solutions for a problem is a positive step. I'm not sure what's next other than another meeting. So that's all I can tell you about that. What I do want to make sure is that the community, especially at Mariemont, understand that the child was held today, that he appeared in court and was held today. We are grateful for that. We want him to continue to be held in detention because we want the community and the students and the teachers to understand that we want them to feel safe, comfortable, and not be anxious and fearful of going and attending schools.
Can you talk about, you had said that you want this bound over to adult court because you're not sure that the juvenile court
That's correct.
is going to be able to hold him or would be willing to hold him. Can you go into that a little bit?
Our office is daily fighting to make sure that violent criminals, particularly juvenile violence, is that those children are detained and held pending the disposition of their cases. We feel that if they're not held accountable, or that they are not receiving the appropriate consequences, the violence will continue. I know that's not all the solutions. This is the initial solution that must be done in our community so that our community is safe. There are other solutions that are either midterm or even long-term solutions in that regard. But the concern is that too often we have our juveniles are being released or not being detained or not being held, and it sends the wrong message. As you notice, just the the videos of the beatings, the first set that were arrested were released the first day. The second set, they were juveniles that were apprehended and arrested and taken into custody were detained, and we haven't had the trouble in our community. No, there has not been additional crimes committed. It sends the wrong message if there's just a catch and release or a revolving door. Our police officers in our community, and every community, is doing a great job, but where we're failing is where the court is holding violent criminals accountable, and we're going to continue to fight that to make sure that everybody is safe.
Chief, I'm sorry. Did you want to?
How many students and how many teachers were on this list?
Do you know?
How many?
I believe one teacher, two teachers, roughly up to 8 children.
Two teachers or one teacher?
One teacher, sorry. One teacher and possibly as many as 8 children were on the hit list.
And Chief, we've now talked about a firearm. It's the first time that we've heard, do you mind stepping up to the podium?
Sure.
It's the first time that we've heard that this plot involved shooting people. Can you at least talk about what this alleged plot was? Just in broad strokes. We didn't know at first whether it was a bomb, whether it was, what it could have been.
To kill.
Okay.
If you can step forward, please.
Yeah, I'm as I've said before, this is an ongoing investigation, and I'm not going to release any more information than I already have at this point in time.
Well, clearly you said that he was going to get a gun, so the plot was to shoot students and the adults?
Absolutely. That definitely was what was going to happen. It's correct.
And then Superintendent, if you wouldn't mind stepping up real quick. I know you're limited as to what you can say about a student, but can you go into any background whatsoever? Has this student been on the administration's radar? Anything like that?
That's not something I'm able to discuss.
What can you discuss in reference to what you knew prior to this child coming forward and ringing the alarm?
Given that this is an ongoing investigation, I am unable to share any specific information around any of our students.
We saw that you mentioned about, increased patrols to help people feel safe at the school and the area. Can you talk about specifically what you're doing on campus to help kids or families who might be scared to go to school?
As I mentioned earlier, we are fully committed to the mental wellness of our students and staff. And so certainly, as you mentioned and has been mentioned, we are working with the local police agencies across our school district for that increased presence in our buildings. But also, all of our school counselors are available and are proactively working with students. We also have provided additional resources today to our families and parents so that they can access resources and have these very difficult and scary conversations with their children at home.
I know what my colleague was trying to get at, I think, is, and I know you can't say a lot, but this kid didn't just come out of nowhere. Was he ever on anybody's radar to say, he must have been on the person who came forward because, but was he on anyone's radar? I mean, was he a straight A student and all of a sudden this is a surprise to everyone? Or was he someone that you say, yeah, we've been looking at this kid since September because he's done some weird things, some strange things. He's been on our list, so it's no surprise to us that this would be the next step to the behavior that he's exhibited over the past few months. I know that's a long-winded.
Yeah, and again, I can't discuss any of the specifics around this student or any of our students in our school district.
You can't say if he's been disciplined, has he been suspended from school before?
I'm unable to share that information right now.
The student who came forward and rang the alarm, what does it say about the district that he felt comfortable enough coming forward?
I think the message that we have worked very hard to send to our students and send to our parents and send to our communities has worked. And that message has been very consistent. If you see something, say something. And that's exactly what happened. And this is a success story, as has been shared, that what was supposed to happen happened. And it sounds like we stopped something very, very tragic from happening as a result of that.
Prosecutor Powers?
Yeah.
You had mentioned that there was at least one student who was under threat of rape.
You'll see some of that in the text messages. I think we can put some of those up now. I think they've been thoroughly redacted.
Can you
I
describe
can
what we're
tell you.
looking at as you're...
Well,
as you have it up
what
there?
you're seeing, I think the green is the student, AB, and then the black that you see is the adult out-of-state individual responding. And we can give you hard copies of this if you like.
Great.
I'll have my communication director take care of that so that you have a better version of it.
Are there other...
Can you explain what this means? So, you say
this-
another person for the list. Like, what was he getting at here?
Well, I think just what it says. I mean, he has a list. He's adding somebody else. He's telling his friend who he's communicating with. He's got another person. I think it's just what it says.
So the two of them plan to go into the school, or just him?
I don't know exactly on the details of that plan, and if I did, I wouldn't discuss it anyway. But that's what you can glean, I think, from these messages.
And this is a shot of his actual phone.
Yes,
And he is communicating with this 22-year-old
yes.
out of state.
Yes, correct. Okay?
Now, I don't know who would be best to answer this question. Schools now are all implementing plans for emergencies like this. I'm wondering, is there a school resource officer on campus? Did this incident make it to campus? Were any of those practices put into place? And are there any changes? Did you learn anything for the future that maybe be better?
You want to comment, or you want me to comment on
It
that,
didn't
Steve?
happen, nothing actually happened on the campus, but I'm sure, like every school, there's a plan, but I'll let the superintendent speak to that.
Yeah, we do have an SRO.
Yeah.
We are fortunate to have a wonderful and very strong collaboration with all of the police agencies that serve our district. We do have a school resource officer in our high school, and that school resource officer was very involved from the time that this threat came to the Mariemont Police Department, and from the beginning worked very collaboratively with us as we worked through this.
One of these texts on the last slide said, can this be done tomorrow? That was on January 17th, I guess, leading to January 18th. So is it possible that this almost wasn't caught and this wouldn't happen?
It is possible. Just like any of these plans, we're just fortunate that, again, it didn't happen exactly the date that they were planning. And I think they're, so we're just very fortunate. And again, just very fortunate, and want to reiterate how important it is for students to understand. So parents, talk to your students, make sure that, and your children, they see something, they say something, and bring it to the authorities right away. Because that's how often you find out in these cases, historically, when you look back, that other students were aware of it but didn't think it was serious. And so then a tragedy happens. So in this case, everything was done very well and exceptional to be able to stop this threat.
One final question for me, maybe you have somebody else, to the superintendent. Can you, this would just be an explanation of the suspension process. So if someone is suspended from school, how long does that last? What is the level? I mean, because at some point, if someone does something, let's say they're suspended, is that a 30-day suspension normally? Is the first time suspension 3 days? And does it go up by, if I'm suspended 3 times in a school year, hypothetically, where would that place me?
Yeah, I really can't speak to the specific timelines of that, because there are many factors that go into those decisions around lengths of suspension or discipline. What I can certainly say is that our school district right now is seeking the most stringent protections and consequences for this student's actions.
Well, and the only reason we ask is, let's say this kid was suspended. What got him back into school? It's sort of like the revolving door that the prosecutor is referring to in the court system. And I don't want to belabor the point, but, and it may just be the process was what it was. But had he been suspended, let's say in December or November, or whenever, what would normally happen under a standard suspension? Is it 3 days? Is it 30 days? Or it can vary?
Yeah, and again, I can't discuss this specific
Well, this is
students
a
at this, and I understand you're asking a hypothetical question there, but there is not necessarily a black and white answer here of this results in this number of days. It's always the result of a lot of investigation and obviously how that applies to a student code of conduct. A lot of different factors go into the decisions that our administrators make in issuing discipline, and so there is not just a necessarily if this then that protocol that's followed in any school.
And I appreciate that, but that's what the judges will say when these kids are back out on the street. So I'm just wanting to make sure that had this kid been suspended, when he, and I'm assuming that he was still in the school system when this happened. How did he get back into the school? But it might not be something.
I'll just add to that. There is a drastic distinction between school suspensions and court when we have a violent offender and victims out in the community. So I just want to clarify that.
Well, depending on what this kid did.
Well, and I'm not discussing this child either. I was addressing your hypothetical. So
Okay.
just to put it there.
Okay.
We're talking apples and oranges, completely different.
Yeah, I know that, but all I'm trying to get at is, was this kid suspended? If he had been suspended, what allowed him back into the school system? If
Right,
now
I-
he's charged with conspiracy to commit murder?
Okay, I understand your question as far as there is some protections for juvenile and their privacy, and at this time, there's no comment regarding any past behavior. We're looking at what occurred yesterday, and what was the plan and the process, and what brought us here today for charges, and these serious charges that were taken against him.
Can we ask the chief a quick question, or the
Okay.
detective? Obviously not divulging anything about the actual case,
Okay?
but when you approached the father of this child, can you at least characterize the reaction that the father had?
I think the father was definitely surprised at what he heard and what his son had been involved in.
Did he say anything specifically that you can divulge? Did he say, "Not my son"? Did he deny it?
No, I think about the fourth time I've said this. I've said about all I'm going to say when it comes to investigation, because it's an ongoing investigation.
Was the
All
bill
right, I think
disputed?
that's it.
Bill disputed?
No, no.
And did you say if this kid has any priors?
I don't have that information at this time. Okay? All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Coach.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for tolerating all our questions.
So I gave you the wrong name.
That's okay.
Is there anybody that's
We didn't see anything anyway. Lieutenant.
I know. All over the place. Thank you guys for helping us.